Our last X33 presenter is Dr. Bill Gaubatz, and he is the Director of Business Development for McDonald Douglas Advanced Space Systems. Dr. Gaubatz.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about the DCXA and the kind of as the next step in the on the way to the X33, which is the next step on the way to operational space. We've met at a number of these meetings now, and I would like to express my thanks and I think congratulations to everyone in the room for the marvelous job the members have done in really bringing this program to fruition. It's been the hard efforts of the grassroots that have helped gain a lot of recognition for the need for low-cost transportation and making people realize that the greater public is really interested in space and not just abstractly interested in space. They're interested in going to space. So you have all helped to develop the vision, to explain the vision, to keep the vision alive. Now we stand, I believe, on the threshold of seeing the vision really become reality, to come alive, and to really enter and become a part of our lives. We've seen the first hardware, the flights of the DCX, and again in the DCXA. The skeptics, the keepers of the status quo saw it as a stunt. I think we all saw on those flights the hardware realization of our dreams for incorporated change. Don't matter that it only went to a few thousand feet. It only took a few people to prepare it for flight and then to service it. No matter that it didn't even come close to cracking the sound barrier, it cracked the operations barrier. It was the manifestation of the agent for change dedicated to lowering the price and increasing the safety and frequency of traveling to, from, and through space. And as it flew, it did send chills through the establishment. It sent hope to the patient and frustrated public. Space had a chance of being open in our lifetimes. Some leaders turned their backs. Some leaders sat back to see what might happen. Some are still sitting on their haunches. Indecisiveness, wondering and waiting. It just looks too risky to some, not a sure thing. Let's not commit just yet. Let's see what others do. Others leaders, fortunately, embraced it, and the leadership that Dan Golden took forward is stellar in helping it to become reality. So as a result, the RLB program was born, and we're ready to take a next step, developing an X33 as a demonstration of the readiness of the technologies, as you've been hearing, to support the development of an operational system. Is this a time for celebration? Yes. Many of you in this room have been responsible for the national program being formulated and maturing. So it's truly rewarding to see SSTO having changed from what was in some people's mind a four-letter word that was not uttered in polite society, to now being the foundation of a national program embraced by the administration, by Congress, by members of both parties, and by many of the major aerospace companies. Is this a time for relaxation? Clearly not. For tough times await us, technically and still culturally. There are technical problems that we all know about, and we've quantified and laid out programs to resolve them. There will be no doubt unknown problems that will emerge, and a lot of confidence that they too will be solved. I think I worry more about the non-technical, the cultural challenges that are still out there. Starting with the term RLV, Reusable Launch Vehicle. It's a throwback term that relates us, could relegate us to the present day space where we launch a few things every year. A few satellites, a few lucky people, a few experiments, confining space business by a launch box mentality. A launch box that where $1,000 a pound is a goal. A launch box where a flight once a week is a goal. These are important goals to achieve for improving our present space business, but which is still a bounded space. If we're going to really unleash the potential of space and let everyone in this room know unbounded space, these goals must be merely entry levels for developing the fundamental space transportation infrastructure, the spaceways, which will open the great space frontier. Spaceways over which thousands of flights per year will be carried out, carrying millions of passengers on their way to and from business or just having fun. We must make certain that what comes out of the next step is a fundamental architecture that can continue to grow and improve as it in turn stimulates the growth of a great new space economy. We must not be satisfied with technical solutions that just satisfy the demands of present-day markets and market projections, and cannot support and stimulate growth. We must also guard against the X-33 becoming an end unto itself, where the sirens of technology beckon us to the rocks of the perfect solution, and the program stretches out, always seeking the zero risk before proceeding. Technologies we have today are not perfect, but they are certainly good enough to start. And to start the development of that open-ended infrastructure that later technologies can grow into and then continue to improve and continue to lower the cost and improve the services. In this context, an SSTO, single-stage orbit, is not just a goal, it is an essential building block of future space. One that will force us to make and continue to make the great advances, making certain that we don't simply shuttle off to some comfortable plateau of capabilities and cost, that while making fine returns on investments for a few, still leave the many, the public stranded, isolated from space. SSTO is much, much more than spacelift and reusable launches. It's a foundation of space operations for continually being expanded with the resulting new business and new adventures in space. So while this is a time for celebrating the start of the next great step, the X-33, it's also the time for redoubled effort to ensure that the X-33 doesn't lose its ways. We must not settle for anything less than the real goal, which is opening space to the public. I'd like to continue with a couple of comments of where we stand on the DCX-A. We had a flight just a week ago today, and like all experimental flights, had a lot of successes, and we learned a lot in doing so. We're continuing on with the same mode of operation, continuing on from where we left off in the DCX with a whole string of accomplishments, both technically and operationally, and a major addition to the DCX-A is in the new technologies that are being incorporated. But fundamental in it is to continue the demonstration, which is key to future space, is that is low-cost operations. And again, demonstrating that you can operate from the basic fundamental mini spaceport, where a minimum size crew and a flight operations control center, this point 3, and no reason that might not be reduced to the 2 people, the flight manager and the ground systems manager, supported by a handful of mechanics who do the pre and post flight inspections and operations, prepare the vehicle for flight, and send it on its way. That's the goal we must keep achieving and demonstrating that as we scale up in size and some technical complexity, that the numbers of people and hands-on that are involved in it will remain low. The DCXA, we're using the X as a flying test bed to incorporate new technologies, many of which would be incorporated into the X33 and with success on into the operational system. What's indicated there are a number of the components of changing out, for example, things like the aluminum tanks that were built by Chicago Bridge and Iron for the DCX to composite tanks for the liquid hydrogen and aluminum lithium tank for the oxygen, substituting some of the structures. And I'll just briefly show you some of the photographs of the equipment that's flying. And we can find a room later on. I did bring a videotape of the first flight. The aeroshell looks very similar to what we flew before, but what also is occurring there are more inspection hatches. Again, part of the maintenance, making it more easily accessible by the ground crew for checkout between flights. Mentioned the aluminum 2219 aluminum tank was substituted with aluminum lithium, lighter weight aluminum lithium tank that was built with the Russian 1640 alloy. Also was another experience in terms of bringing in a total Russian fabrication in a design fab to print. They qualified it, and that's what we're flying. We changed out the aluminum structure that goes between the 2 tanks and made that an all-composite intertank structure. Gives you an idea what the replacement was, and that was a reduction of about some 40% in weight. On the base of the vehicle, we added a section in here that allows us to do testing of some of the thermal protection systems and the high heat flux that is generated on some of the landing flights. The Marshall Space Flight Center built some composite liquid hydrogen lines for us, as well as composite valves. Those are in and operating. We substituted for the gas side, the gas reaction control system, a liquid to gas converter for generating the gaseous hydrogen, and also integrated that with the gas auxiliary power unit, which powers the hydraulic system. The aluminum tanks were replaced by an all-composite, graphite epoxy composite tank. This is about 8 feet in diameter, some 16 feet tall. It was built in 2 sections, again to show that parts that were made by the autoclave process could then be joined together to build larger parts and sections out of autoclave bonding. The design of the tanks were such to incorporate and demonstrate the capability for a all-integral tank structure. The tank is the hydrogen tank has internal insulation, a 3D foam polyurethane that keeps the tank walls at roughly liquid nitrogen temperatures. It shows the installation of some of the instrumentation. This is actually our 4th generation now of liquid hydrogen tanks, and we built them in a number of different configurations, this first one being built back on the National Aerospace Weapon Program, the NASP. So the system was integrated, and very similar to the way we did the DCX, using actually the flight stand as the integration tool. The aero shell slipped on over in place and shipped to White Sands this spring, and as I mentioned, underwent its first successful test flight this last week. And part of the success, I guess, is that we continue to learn from it. We had an anomaly, at least it wasn't expected in terms of landing, that we toasted one of the flaps, and that has to be repaired. But as scheduled right now, we're still looking at being in place and getting our next test flight going the 7th of June. So where we are in the map that we've kind of been following since 1990 is the 3 steps to getting to an operational system shortly after the turn of the century. Step 1 we think is essentially complete. We'll fill in more data now as we go along on the DCXA flights. But a major goal of that was demonstrating that you could achieve this aircraft-like operation. It wasn't something we just had to wave our hands about and say similar to, but we can bring in hard data and evidence that shows that it indeed is achievable. Step 2 then will be the X-33 and the ability to scale up the technologies and the operations, showing that as you go to larger scales, same efficiencies of operation can be achieved, that the materials that you need to build the operational system indeed are there, and a manufacturing database is available to allow you to scale up for the Step 3. And so we're looking forward then that shortly after the turn of the century, in the 2003, 4, 5 time period, we could see our first operational system. The X-33 we're proceeding with and have submitted is looks like a larger DCX and XA. Modifications that, as you can see, as we've learned, both from flight testing and wind tunnel testing and some of the aerodynamic shapes and configurations, but basically the same vertical takeoff, vertical landing system. And I think, as the others have told you, it's going to be a tremendous opportunity to provide again, a real expansion of the technologies and the broader flight envelope and test environment, as well as the ability to expand the flight envelope, the ability to fly these configurations to the boundaries, to understand what their real performance capabilities are. Again, what you need to do if you're going to really achieve routine operations. And at the same time, continue to expand the whole concepts of operations. Our approach on operations, again, looks very similar to what we're doing on the X and XA, is a scale-up, but still maintaining the same streamlined type of operations, where a few people will be involved in the flight operations control center, and there's still a small crew of mechanics maintaining the vehicle. Initial flight testing will start at the White Sands Missile Range in New Mexico, where we would go through our initial flight envelope expansion testing, expanding up through transonic, probably up to Mach 8 flight region, and finally where you need to begin flying off range. And We're planning on opening a second site at Dryden, at Edwards Air Force Base, which gives you the capability then of flying between the two sites, completing your flight envelope expansion at higher Mach numbers. And probably equally, or in some respects even more importantly, cracking the overflight barrier that, again, must be achieved in order to have the truly routine operations and a system that will service all communities. As a part of that, I think all three companies have been talking with the Office of Commercial Space Transportation, which is now part of the FAA in terms of the whole thought of certification. Again, another critical process that has to be in place for commercial operations, and one that you hope would be fundamentally in place and agreed to by the turn of the century, where you would like to make a business decision to proceed. And such a certification will become essential in terms of operating from inland as well as coastal sites, and will play a major role in terms of the insurance base that can be achieved. So our approach that we've been following is one of scaling up in terms of the design side, and of going to progressively higher and higher propellant mass fractions, squeezing the designs more in terms of the dry weights, and in each case then proving out the designs and the fabrication techniques that are eventually would be incorporated as part of the design for the operational system. And in this way that we hope by the turn of the century, we can have another DC-1 flying that will play a similar role in space as we were able to play in aviation. Thank you.